I'm fat. Right, so nothing to demonitor. Alex, do you want to... You've got a YouTube channel, haven't you?
Well, it got nuked 2 days ago. My YouTube channel got nuked 2 days ago. My name is Alexander Sangmoore. I serve as a content creator and lead archivist for an independent media group called The Reality Report, logo here and here. And we essentially talk about things that the mainstream media refuses to either talk about or to even acknowledge, because we live in an age of utmost political correctness. And we face a great degree of political persecution. And I have prepared today some questions for Mr. White Whiskers, Sargon. And genuine questions that I believe that the electorate should know about. Certainly. Thank you for the microphone, good sir. Now, it depends. The Reality Report is an independent media organisation that primarily consists of British patriots, nationalists. We occupy a centre-right, the centre-right on the political spectrum, and suffice it to say, grassroots organisation, growing particularly quickly. We have other affiliate organisations, such as Antifa Public Watch, which are presently experiencing a degree of algorithmic deboosting of beyond 99% on Facebook. Now, what this specifically means is that last time I checked, they had 17,000 or so followers on Antifa Public Watch London, and they made a post. It was up for 4 hours, and the amount of people who viewed the post out of 18,000 followers was 2 people. After 4 hours, the algorithmic deboosting that the alt-left Silicon Tech Valley Alliance is forcing on the world is so extreme that it is beyond 99% algorithmic deboosting of content uploaded. This is something that we have forwarded to the president since he has created an email, a mailing website where you all, if you have archives of every single case that you have been censored or deboosted or politically censored and so forth, send it over to the Trump administration and see what he can do with the sum of information that is provided to him. Beyond that, I'm here today because Mr. Sargon represents someone who has the testicular fortitude to stand for freedom of speech, freedom of expression in this country, the freedom to make jokes, okay? We don't want to be like other nations that have morality police. And only the other day I saw a Scottish, I believe, reporter who was threatening and intimidating someone from the Netherlands, if memory recalls accurately, because he wasn't of the accurate political persuasion. Now, when the media act like the Stasi secret police and try to threaten and intimidate people, we remember what CNN did to that teenager who posted a picture of Trump bodying CNN in a meme. The media is particularly desperate to shut down every single one of you here, and it's really quite fascinating. They're trying very hard. Facebook has lost $40 billion in stock value over the last few months. YouTube lost $70 billion, okay, last month. Yes. Thank you all for attending today.
Sorry, we just got to be quiet for 2 minutes for them. Mine's a Stella. All right, thanks.
You're going to like this one. I'll send that to you later. Oh.
Very, very, very
I'll send it to you later.
Very good. Yes, sir. It reality weavers. Your content, by the way, is consistently archived across multiple websites, such that it never gets completely taken down.
Well, do let 4chan know that I salute all of their efforts in the culture war.
Will do, sir. By the way, I have created an audio version of the UKIP interim manifesto. I spoke with Mr. Batten approximately a week ago, and he told me that there may be an opportunity to put the full UKIP manifesto after its interim, after the 23rd. I'm also fairly happy today that the milkshake marauders haven't shown up, because I was quite worried, because to them, myself and the reality report and yourself, this is one of the questions that I will be asking. They consider you thought leaders, and myself a thought leader, and the reality report a thought leader that must be shut down. So they really appreciate
Yeah, you're talking about homelessness, mate. See that van? I live in it quite a lot. And I was 8 months in a van and 3 months in a car. So I understand about homelessness. Yeah. No, hang on a minute.
What's up, mate? What's up? Chap at the back, would you like to have a chat? Would you like to have a chat? You just want to shout? Come on, come over and have a chat. Look, I'll give you a mic. I'll give you a mic. Hey, man.
No.
Okay, well, hang on a sec.
I don't shake hands.
Okay, well, sorry, man. Do you mind if I talk to this chap first? Right, I'll give you your own microphone. Hey, come on. That's not yours. Come on, that's not yours.
By all means, that costs £1, but the publicity is worth 1,000.
Okay, well, hang on. Right. So, if you can give me 2 seconds, I'll talk to this chap first. Okay, well, we'll sit down. I'll give you a microphone, and then, yeah, well, that's how we're going to do it. So you can either agree to that or you can leave.
You gonna let me speak?
I will, if you'd like to take a seat and take a
I don't
microphone.
want to sit down.
Why not?
I'll just sit here. Yeah?
Okay, well, here you go.
I'm going to go, everyone. All I have to say is love each other.
Good advice. Why did we have to be so confrontational about it? I feel that we could have sat down and had a reasonable conversation about the subjects. Right, where was that? Oh, there you are, sir. Thank you about that. Sorry about the delay.
No worries. All right.
When he says love one another, probably not right here, right now, just for the decency of it, if that's okay.
Screw it. Let's put it
Right.
here. Okay. So, Sargon.
Right, what was your name, sir?
Yeah, my name is Alexander Sangmoore.
Nice to meet you.
I mutually so, sir. So I serve as a archivist and content creator for the Reality Report independent media group, and I was looking to ask you some questions today concerning various topics. So I won't stay on the questions. I'll just get to it.
Okay.
So, no one has gone for the Switzerland deal or mentioned it so far. Switzerland is not a member of the European Union, but get free trade. Would you be in favour of getting the same deal as Switzerland post-Brexit?
Yes, but they can't give it to us.
They can't give it to us, I know, but it is possible.
That would be a wonderful deal, yeah.
It demonstrates the hypocrisy of treating us as such.
You're absolutely right. And you can compare that to the Norway deal, where they have something similar but have to accept free movement. So the EU does do a kind of a la carte by arrangement deals, and then when they come to us, they say, "Oh no, we don't do that." Well, yes, they do. They're just lying.
It demonstrates a degree of hypocrisy and internally contradicting policies.
It does, but I always hate having to go to hypocrisy as a criticism, because frankly, everyone is in some way a hypocrite, and every set of values has internal contradictions. I think it's more powerful when you just point out they're obviously lying to us when they say they don't do that, because they do that. So,
I see. Thank you. Will UKIP reform the left-leaning police to be politically neutral, and specifically, what measures and policies would you recommend be implemented to this end?
absolutely. I mean, I'm the one constantly banging the drum about this in UKIP, saying our institutions are becoming politicized. Honestly, it's left-wing activists. For example, and I love bringing up Harry Miller, Harry the Owl, who is a trans-exclusionary radical feminist. So not necessarily someone with which I share much in common, but he got a visit from the police because he had liked or retweeted, I can't remember which one it was, a TERF limerick. And in this, it was essentially a biologically essentialist statement saying men are men and women are women, and the biology lines up with what they become. He got a visit from the police who wanted to, quote, check his thinking on this, because the police had had some kind of diversity training, and this had put this into their heads, and now suddenly they were monitoring TERF activity on Twitter. This is obviously a politically motivated issue. This is obvious. I personally would go full Bolsonaro on the issue and just defund any kind of diversity initiatives, any kind of diversity training, because frankly I see them as a front for this kind of neo-Marxist infiltration.
As a means of the public fighting against the non-police neutrality that is clearly aligned with progressive intersectional agendas,
yes.
Would you deem it a prudent decision for the public to collate or to have a place where they can send archives of their experiences with police such that they can be named and shamed?
I'm not sure about saying naming and shaming in particular, but I totally agree that the public should, if they feel they're being mistreated, film their interactions with the police. Because I don't think the police should be the opponents of the public, obviously, but I think there are definitely police who have been given an ideological agenda that they frankly don't understand. They're not equipped to understand it, and it's not expected that they should understand it, but they are now being tasked with effectively enforcing this on the rest of us. There are already places that do this sort of thing. Crime Bodge is a great one for police as a police watchdog. And in America, there's a YouTube channel, Facebook page called "Film Your Marxist Professors," where they ask students that if their professor is trotting out communism as the answer to all of life's problems, film it and send it to them so it can be demonstrated that this is happening. Because otherwise, this happens behind closed doors with a captive audience, and that's very dangerous. That's why I think so much indoctrination is coming out of these institutions.
See, thank you. With the EU trying to form an EU army, many, including yourself, have commented that they are trying to form an economic, political and military sovereign state. Is Germany trying their luck with an attempt at a Fourth Reich? Would you care to expand on your thoughts on this? Where will we see ourselves in 6 to 9 months in the case scenario that they continue with this authoritarian tendency?
Well, the answer is just yes. This is Germany's attempt to take over Europe once again. You can see this in the way it's treating Greece. It's actually taking certain Greek islands as collateral for the failure for Greece to repay its debts. Nobody wants to talk about it, but Germany is buying up Europe because it didn't manage to do this through force of arms.
I actually was raised in Greece between the ages of 6 to 17, and they have turned Greece into an economic debt slave.
Yes.
The International Monetary Fund specifically, and the European Union.
Yes, and just to be clear on this, it's because Greece can't leave the euro. There's no legal mechanism for Greece to leave the euro, and that means that the Greek people either have to become as economically powerful as the Germans or forever be their serfs. And obviously, the Greeks are never going to become Germans in that way. So effectively, Greece has become a kind of just a colony of Germany in that way, an economic colony.
It is also particularly problematic that Greece has a rising, genuine neo-Nazi party called the Golden Dawn, rising for opposition to the European Union. You do not want to push people so far such that they actually adopt ethno-nationalist policies and so forth. Anyway, next.
That's absolutely the problem. There needs to be credible, centrist, liberal opposition to the things that are being done, because we recognize that they're wrong, and for some reason we feel, oh, well, we can't say or do anything about this. No, not only can we must. We must be the alternative, because otherwise, like you say, you get very scary people, and because they're the only ones addressing the issue, they're the ones who get the support. We have to take that place instead of them, because we don't want those people rising.
Agreed. Next question. What do you think of members of governments who are promoting cultural deconstructivism by proclaiming that Europe has no native culture? Examples cited are Swedish culture minister, German Chancellor Angela Merkel, and Francis Macron, all proclaiming that France, Sweden, Germany, etc. have no native culture. What are your thoughts on this? This trend of cultural deconstructivism specifically?
I noticed that it always comes from childless, unmarried people who have spent their lives in academia and not in their own households. I think that anyone with children would say the complete opposite. And any foreigner who comes to Britain, England particularly in this regard, also is well aware that we have a native culture, that we are a people, and whenever I go to any other countries, I recognize that they have a native culture too. This is part of a radical left-wing open borders agenda that is specifically designed to erase the nation state and the constituent cultures that reside therein. I think we have to resist it. And the way to
Absolutely.
resist it is actually with family values. And I'm very libertarian in this regard. I don't think we should force anyone to do anything. And I never thought I'd end up preaching how the use of family values for the integrity of a civilization, but we are here, and it's true, and we do have to do this.
Thank you. I feel that this trend of cultural deconstructivism is particularly dehumanizing for the native populations. What is your opinion on this?
Oh, expand on how you feel it's dehumanizing. It's a very interesting way of putting it.
Certainly. So the idea is that certain native cultures have certain embedded characteristics that have been with them for centuries. And seeing a trend of decivilizationalism, detraditionalization, and dechristianization in the nations that are ruled by the EU bureaucrats, I find that their tendency to undermine, insult, demean, and otherify the things that are inherent to a culture and its people is dehumanizing, because culture is an aspect of the identity of a people's, and diminishing that identity is also diminishing
Their
who
sense
they
of
are.
self, isn't
Yes,
it?
their sense
It's
of
their
self
sense of
and
self,
who
yeah.
they are, what they stand for, what they represent. That is how I would classify it as specifically dehumanizing.
That's a really, really interesting way of putting it, and I can't really see much there that I would disagree with. And in fact, it reminds me of a conversation I watched between Margaret Thatcher and a Swedish journalist, where the Swedish journalist was effectively trying to deconstruct Margaret Thatcher's pride in being British, and she was using the Nazis to do it, and Thatcher just turned around and said, well, I'm sorry that, your people surrendered to the Nazis. I'm sorry you were less capable of defending your democracy, defending your cultural integrity, but we are not going to be ashamed of the fact that we were able, just because you feel bad that your country capitulated. Like the lady who came around earlier and was shouting about how the Europeans must pay the price for having a successful history. No,
This
we
is
don't.
emotional blackmail.
Yes, and what kind of person tries to strip someone else's identity away? Because what you're doing there when you do that is you're trying to isolate them and cut off any of their support structures, their social structures, their own personal connection to the culture that they come from, and you're trying to isolate them so they're more easily manipulated. Frankly, I view it as an evil thing to do, and I do not use the term evil very lightly. I'm very rare to use that, but I do find that to be predatory and pernicious, and something that has to be resisted at all costs, because as far as I'm concerned, they will take these things away from you if you give them the opportunity, which is why we have to fly a flag. I'm not a natural flag flyer, but in times like these we need them.
I would like people to have courage, confidence, and conviction, and to go to the ballot box because it sends a message. It is something that I have repeatedly said, and I think that is the only way that we are going to solve this issue peacefully.
I totally agree with you.
And it's the way that we should.
All of this can be solved at the ballot box. All it requires is certain decisions being made that are not outside of the scope of our political environment, that don't require us to violate any human rights or hurt anyone, or even, we don't even have to necessarily be offensive about it. We can just go there and say, these are our convictions and this is what we're voting for.
Thank you. So, how do you believe we should best celebrate and safeguard British culture and heritage with such militant opposition and hatred from the modern left?
Honestly, it's just moral fortitude that we require. All we have to do is say no. When they say, oh, you have to take that down, that's racist, we can say, well, no. This is my property, this is my heritage, this is my flag, I'm going to fly it.
Stand for it.
Yes. Yes. We just stand for it. That's
Thank
absolutely
you.
right. Because, and I think it's important that we make sure that we know what we're standing for, because it's really not just a cloth. There is a system of values that we have, that we all share, that are implicit within this. And when they turn around and say to you, but what are British values anyway, as you know they're going to do, you say fairness. Because this is not a universal value. It is a particularly and peculiarly British value. In Germany, it's conformity. In France, it's envy above whoever's above you and the need for perpetual revolution. But in Britain, it really is about fairness. And then once they bring you down to what's the core value, you can build on that. So what is fair? I mean, that's the reason, in my opinion, that the English revolt at the idea of a poll tax. It's not fair to ask people who don't earn money to pay taxes. That's the core problem with the poll tax. And it's poll taxes that back in the 14th century got Wat Tyler leading a revolution, and it was the poll tax that got Margaret Thatcher getting a bunch of riots in the streets in the 80s. You know, it's a deeply unfair thing, because I really do think that the British character is based on the value of fairness. And again, you can go to any Islamic country and they won't even mention the word fairness. Go to communist China and ask them if they think fairness is important. But it is important in the Anglosphere. In the English-speaking world, fairness is our primary value. It's what that flag stands for. Don't let them take it away.
Thank you. If you were to be the education minister for Britain, what don't consider it out of the question, good sir, the way that things are going presently. But what qualities and virtues would you like to see in Britons made manifest?
I think that, yes. Well, I was about to go on to that, actually. Exactly. I think that I would have a mandatory civics class to teach people about the political history of Britain, why it's important and why it's good, because it genuinely is good. Because if Britain is responsible for almost everything that we consider to be laudable about Western democracies. It isn't the French or Germans that invented this. It's not the Spanish or the Italians. It's the Brits. And we should take ownership of these things. Say, no, they're our inventions. Individual liberty, free speech, democracy in its modern form, constitutional democracy. These are our ideas that we see manifested most purely in the United States. These are British innovations. They are not German. They are not French. We should be proud of these. We should be proud of the common law. The common law is your friend, you know? In France, it's not like that. So we really have to start putting in young people's heads, look, the country you live in is a good thing. It's good. You know, the alternatives are way worse. The alternatives are awful, which is why so many people from around the world want to come here. You know, and we should be exporting these ideas, not imperialistically. We don't need to conquer anyone. I think we can do all of this via persuasion. We can just go up to them and say, listen, here's a way that you might not have thought of. Consider trying doing it this way. It works for us. We think it can work for you too.
So appreciating British culture, heritage, tradition, etc., as well as standing for it, actively standing for it, not just in words, but in actions at the ballot box.
Correct.
Yes? Excellent.
Correct.
Next question. What is your position on the sovereignty of our territorial waters, and what would UKIP do to protect them from foreign fishing fleets?
I think you know the answer. I think
Okay,
that they're our
excellent.
sovereign territorial waters, and we have a navy.
Excellent. This here is a question from Vinnie Sullivan, the founder of The Reality Report.
Yes.
How do you feel about the grassroots movements of the DFLA at home and the Yellow Vest abroad around you, and can you remark on their successes and failures?
Yes, I can. The Yellow Vests were successful in getting Macron to repeal his fuel tax. I believe that now they are just essentially a common revolt against the imperious presidency that he has going on. The DFLA, I'm actually not as familiar with, to be honest. They don't seem to make the news as much, probably because they're not as dramatic as the Yellow Vests. But I very much like their slogan, which is just against all extremism. I think that's fantastic. I think they're working class expressions of political frustration. I think these are communities that are not listened to. I think they're told that they're bad people when they raise their objections, because they don't. The objections they had don't fall into the morally acceptable boundaries from the Westminster Consensus. You're allowed to talk about these issues, and if you have an issue outside of that, you're a racist. And I think that it's very dangerous to allow that to proliferate, to continue, because these people's problems are not going away, and I don't even know where we derive the moral authority to ignore them. You know, they are tax-paying citizens. They're our countrymen. Why would we just tell them that they're bad? You know, surely we have a duty to listen to that.
I see. Thank you. Is it not hypocritical, internally contradicting, and ironic that the left seems to support the IRA, who are, by the left's own standards, white nationalists?
Yes, but I'm not surprised that the left have found a massive internal contradiction in their own philosophy yet again.
Surprise,
Yes.
surprise.
I'll contain myself there. But it's a good point. I mean, in a way, you literally could call the IRA white nationalists.
Well,
It's just an amusing way of framing it, isn't it?
do you believe Tony Blair's involvement in actively subverting Brexit by advising Macron and Merkel on how to negotiate is treason?
I think Tony Blair is responsible for a lot of treason. I think that's the least of his crimes, frankly. I think that he's I think that he was aware. There was a biography written about Tony Blair where he was alleged to have said that he wants to open the borders to create a voting demographic for Labour. He ordered the rest of his party not to mention this because obviously it sounds unbelievably bad. And in the Telegraph the other day, it was published that he apparently didn't realise the numbers that would come. He knew that the Iraq War was probably not true, and he went with it. The justification for it was probably not true, and he went with it anyway. And honestly, there's a few years ago, I think it was 2017, he did an interview with, again, I think it was the Telegraph and the Independent, where he said, look, there are millions of people in the Islamic world who have values that are just fundamentally incompatible with the modern Western democracies that we live in. And he doesn't know what to say or do about this, but at least he can recognize that he did this. And that's the thing. Tony Blair is the man who has led us to this point, and we must never forget that. So anything that comes out of that demon's mouth should be treated with a great deal of skepticism, and God willing, one day, he will see justice. Should we make that the last one? Because I think there are other people waiting.
Certainly. Would you have time for one more, sir?
Go on, very quickly.
Very quickly. Should Mike Stutchberry be the poster boy for morbid obesity awareness in the United Kingdom?
I don't think he has a choice.
Thank you ever so much for your time.
Thank you so much.